Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to change it up a little bit as I moderate an esteemed panel of this episode of the Leadership Spotlight series. I have several of my Akamai colleagues here with me, Kate Prouty, our CIO, Bobby Blumofe, our CTO, and Boaz Gelbord, our CSO. Kate was the guest on my last episode, and the session received so much interest, particularly regarding our partnership to reimagine Akamai's website and how I like to say, sip our own champagne, using more than 20 of our Akamai products to power and protect our site. So I wanted to take that conversation a step further and expand the narrative by inviting our CTO and CSO to talk about Akamai on Akamai and how in our journey to leveraging our own products and essentially creating a showroom for how we use our own technology, which in turn provides greater benefits for our customers. We know the most innovative companies in the world choose Akamai to power and protect their digital experiences. And that's because when we think about innovation and building new products, we're addressing customer needs, but also our own. This approach to product innovation is always a team effort across the company. So I am so excited to discuss our transformational efforts with this panel today. A warm welcome to our Leadership Spotlight Series guests, Kate, Bobby, and Boaz. Hello, everyone.
Hey, Kim.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Hey, Kim.
Yes.
Hello. All right, I'm going to dive right in, and I'm going to start with Bobby. Bobby, as CTO of Akamai, can you discuss why we are committed to using our own technologies? What benefits do we gain from being our own customer?
Yeah, great question. And Kim, thanks for getting us all together on this topic. For one thing, I love talking about Akamai on Akamai. It's a favorite topic of mine. And I think the opportunity to do it with this group of people is great because this group really represents the ensemble of functions that really were the genesis of Akamai on Akamai. And to tell that story, actually, to tell the sort of the creation of Akamai on Akamai, we kind of have to go back. And if you'll indulge me to sort of tell this story, we have to go back to biblical times, I guess, 10, 12 years ago.
You're really going back.
That's way back there, right? Biblical times. And back then we really were just a CDN. We were doing app acceleration and delivery. Compute, I would say, was really very nascent, teeny tiny. And we were at the beginning of our journey in cybersecurity. And back then, we did use Akamai for some of our external facing web applications to accelerate the app, deliver the app, and some basic security capabilities. But it was really all pretty ad hoc. Akamai on Akamai really came together when we brought these functions together, the functions represented here. And I like to say that new ideas come when existing ideas can mingle, when you can bring existing ideas together, let them mingle, and that's where new ideas come from. And in this case, the ideas were coming from our product teams, that is our product management and engineering teams, who were faced with the challenge of building out a whole new line of products in cybersecurity. And IT, which was faced with a growing global and diverse workforce and the challenges that come with that. And our InfoSec team, which was faced with the challenge of the enormously high stakes that we deal with in cybersecurity, especially as the company was becoming mission critical for our customers and becoming a cybersecurity company. And we were fortunate that we had opportunities and we had structures in place that allowed these teams to get together on a pretty regular basis, both leadership and really across the board in these organizations. And from that collaboration and from that mingling of ideas from these diverse groups came about this vision of where we wanted to go, if you will, a North Star or a vision that guided us in many different directions, or in many different ways. Directions is not the right word, many different ways. And one was on the product side. It guided where we want to go on our cybersecurity product. For IT, it was our guiding star on enterprise architecture, and for InfoSec, it was our guiding star on where we want to go in terms of how we protect the enterprise. Now today, I think that vision would probably be somewhat, or at least partially, described as zero trust, but back then that term really wasn't being used. But you can think of it as a vision that really fully embraces the idea that that your data center really should be the cloud, that your WAN should be the internet, and your office buildings should be private coffee shops with great Wi-Fi. And Akamai on Akamai, in many ways, was then our way of implementing that vision, using our own products and in fact, also developing new products was our way of realizing that vision. And it was also, by the way, very much a collaboration with marketing, because as you pointed out, it allows Akamai to become a showroom not only for our own products, but a showroom for this vision, for how we think enterprise architecture and enterprise security should be done in the future world.
That's fantastic. I love the spirit of relentless innovation as you took us through that journey with Akamai at the center. Thank you so much. And I wanna double click a bit on that zero trust point and throw it over to Kate. So, Kate, in your opinion, what was our why for exploring zero trust security and kind of drafting off what Bobby just told us?
Yeah, again, another great question. I think, I will say we've always been pretty focused on security. I think really security minded even way back in the biblical days, as Bobby had said.
Decade.
More than a decade ago. I'd go even further than a decade. But I would say that, I would say around, a decade or so ago, we were the victim of a pretty wide scale cyber attack that compromised a system, thankfully, that didn't contain any sensitive data. But I think that sort of really got the ball moving on this idea of zero trust. And I think at its most basic level, our goal is to eliminate malware from our environment. I think unfortunately, malware is more often than not introduced unknowingly from an unsuspecting end user. And so with that in mind, we really started this idea of zero trust. You really have to start from that place where even your own employees are people that you can't necessarily trust just because of this inadvertent ability for them to introduce malware. And so, thankfully, as a CIO, I now work, I do work for an internet security company that has a suite of enterprise security tools, right, that have made it kind of easier for me to develop this roadmap and this North Star, as Bobby had mentioned, along with our product team. And so we worked really closely with them to develop this roadmap and to start implementing our own tools around, SSO and MFA, eliminating this idea of, allowing people onto your network, really creating this perimeterless security concept, and using our own secure internet access tools to limit exposure to things like, clicking on phishing email, or inadvertently clicking a bad link on a valid website. So, there's a whole suite of tools, thankfully, at my disposal that we have worked to introduce and to implement. As Bobby said, really in partnership with the product team, we continue to partner really closely. And I'll say that our very early adoption of key Akamai security solutions allowed us to really quickly pivot to a remote workforce back in March of 2020. So, while everybody else was scrambling, we were already poised to kind of allow a fully virtual remote workforce, because we already have this idea that all access is remote access. We already sort of had adopted that. And so again, as a CIO and as an IT organization, that allowed us to really focus on things like delivering virtual collaboration and productivity tools at scale, and not worry so much about how people are going to get access to our network.
That's great. I love us being, essentially use case number one, and really kind of understanding customer pains of our own to then develop a roadmap for the future and for our customers. That's such a great background. So speaking of security and threats, Boaz, from a security standpoint, we obviously protect the world's most innovative companies. What lessons learned from our customers do we apply to our own approach to security, almost the reverse of what Kate was talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kim. And one of the realities of today's cyber landscape is that in many ways, we all face similar threats. there's threats that are specific to industries and specific to certain companies. But the reality is that any company today with an online presence, which is virtually any company at all, faces a similar myriad of threats across different dimensions, whether it's things like third-party compromise, or whether it's their perimeter, which is being their networks which are being attacked, or as Kate mentioned, end user systems that are being attacked. There's an incredible amount of value that comes from talking to other practitioners and seeing how do they view these threats, what are the different puts and takes that they've made, what are the attacks that they've seen. And that kind of collaboration, both formal and informal, is incredibly important to developing your own approach as a security organization. So I'm very fortunate to get to meet with many of the CISOs of leading organizations who are our customers, and to really exchange notes on how they're approaching these challenges. And that's certainly informed a large amount of how we approach things. We have some formal channels, such as, for example, through FSISAC, the financial sharing, information sharing entity, where we're part of their critical providers program, where we meet and we have channels for exchanging information bidirectionally to understand what are the kind of threats that major actors in the financial space are facing. Certainly from a Akamai on Akamai perspective, it's fantastic to have this tool set at our disposal. And security is really a team sport. I mean, my team works very closely with Bobby's team and with Kate's team and with our entire engineering organization to move forward security as a concept within the company. And working within a security vendor and having those tools at our disposal, being able to be customer zero, and being able to give the candid feedback where, I look at ourselves as essentially a non-paying customer of the company. And we look to have those candid conversations, and it's a really great way to be able to both influence the roadmap in terms of where the products are going, as well as sometimes just shape the overall strategy and say, hey, these are the things that we're seeing from an attack perspective. So it's an incredible, valuable feedback loop. And there's also just very innovative solutions that we get to kind of try out early on. I would say microsegmentation is a really good example of where, in close cooperation with Kate's group and with the IT team and with the engineering team, we've managed to eat our own dog food or drink our own champagne, implementing microseg and getting the security benefits of that. And at the same time, also having that feedback loop where we're saying, hey, here are some of the challenges, here are some of the things that where we've hit speed bumps. And that helps improve the overall product for all of our customers. Certainly Akamai supports and has in its customer base, the world's largest financial institutions, the e-commerce, really across the board, if you think of the leading companies in the world, and they're facing threats on a daily basis, whether it's denial of service or whether it's attacks on their web applications, attacks on their end users. Our ability to exchange information with them on an ongoing basis and to both understand how we can better secure them, but also how we can better secure themselves is something that makes the entire ecosystem better.
Yeah, so many great things there that you said. I love security as a team sport, the bi-directional communication model, the power of community and solving tough challenges and protecting both ourselves and our customers. So that was great. Thank you so much, Boaz. Bobby, I'm going to go back to you. Can you speak more to our ideation process for Zero Trust? What's the internal collaboration model and what different groups were involved?
Well, it's great that you're asking that because these themes that you've heard again and again, and I'm so glad that we're on these themes, which is the collaboration, the bidirectionality. You're hearing that from all of us because it is so important. And what you're asking about is an important aspect of exactly that bidirectionality, because it's easy to think that Akamai on Akamai is really just an outside-in thing, that we take our external facing, that is our customer-facing products, and we use them externally. But there's also an inside-out aspect, which is taking our internal needs and knowledge and experiences and using that to guide the external or customer-facing roadmap. Now, you have to do that with a reasonable balance, because, of course, it would be hubris to think that, well, our needs are exactly the same as our customers' needs. There's, of course, differences, but it's certainly reasonable to expect that our needs and experiences should guide that product roadmap. And obviously, if it doesn't work for us, if our products won't even work for us, how can we expect that they would work for our customers? So our internal experience is really important, and it helps guide the roadmap. When it came to actually thinking about ideation, our zero trust roadmap, at the time I was actually running the engineering and product teams. And I remember actually getting together with our IT and InfoSec teams, Boaz's team and Kate's team. And we had a number of conversations specifically geared toward where we need to go. And I remember framing the conversation as follows. I basically said, imagine that these teams worked for you. Basically, Kate's team, Boaz's team. Imagine these product engineering teams worked directly for you. What would you want them to do? What acquisitions would you like to do, and what products would you like to build? And by framing the question that way, I think it sort of opens the aperture, and it opens open to more possibilities than they otherwise would have brought forward. And that really led us to a lot of new directions. It really led us into the beginnings of Zero Trust at Akamai with the acquisition of that led to EAA. EAA is really sort of a combination, EAA being Enterprise Application Access. It's really a combination of an acquisition and organic development. That really came from those conversations. Years later, of course, Boaz has talked about, and Kate too talked about Guardicore and microsegmentation. And most recently, I'd have to say the same thing was a factor. It wasn't the whole thing, but it was certainly a factor in our enthusiasm for the Linode acquisition. So I think it's important to realize that Akamai is a bi-directional, collaborative endeavor.
For sure. I love the lens you challenged the teams to think about in attacking the problem.
Opening the aperture and not just tweaks on existing, but potentially whole new areas.
Yeah, rethinking everything. I love that. I love that challenge approach. Kate, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to add that, not only do we co-innovate with the product team, but we are also the first testers of a lot of the development that comes out of our product team, which, I think is really useful to our customers because we sort of, hit the hurdles or the bumps along the way so that our customers don't have to. And that is also a great, really nice relationship between the two because we're asking for them to develop solutions to help support challenges that we're having. And then they're giving us access to, sort of the latest and greatest technology in a limited availability or even beta. And we're kind of working through some of the kinks. So it really is a great symbiotic relationship here.
Now let's switch gears. On my Leadership Spotlight series, I always like the audience to get to know our guests a little bit better and their perspectives on leadership. So we prepared a question for each of the presenters. I'm going to start with Boaz, then I'm going to go to Kate, and then I'm going to go to Bobby. So what advice would you give to someone starting out in their career? Boaz, over to you.
Yeah, I think security is really so much about curiosity and trying to understand things. And for folks who are at the beginning of their career, I'd really encourage them to just follow their passion in terms of technologies that they're interested in. So much information is available freely online. There's so many free resources that you can use. Just spin something up and just start tinkering away. I mean, I usually find that with folks, early stage candidates who we speak to, that's really one of the things that correlates most closely with success in the future is people who just have that curiosity, like to tear things around, apart, are curious, and then build relationships. This is really, no matter how much technology advances, at the end of the day, organizations are relationship built. So build your network, talk to people, reach out.
Fantastic, Boaz. Kate, what's your perspective?
So I think what Boaz said about being curious really resonated because that's part of my advice too. So it's beyond being curious, but it's also raising your hand. So raise your hand as often as you can. Be willing to take on challenges you're not sure you're ready for, and just being always, sort of always being there to be kind of, hey, I'll do it, I'll take it, it's me.
That's great. Bobby, take us home with your advice.
Yeah, mine is all about following great people or connecting with great people. And as I've gotten older, I like to give people unsolicited advice, especially my kids. And they pay attention to my advice about as much as I paid attention to my parents' advice. I'm definitely turning into my father, but I oftentimes I've told them, and I've told many people the story of joining Akamai. And at the time when I joined Akamai, all the way back in '99, I actually didn't know what the company did. What I did know is that I knew the founder. And I knew the VP of engineering. I knew a bunch of the other engineers. I knew about half a dozen people at the company. I knew they were great people. I knew they were people that were talented and exciting and motivated and fun to be with. People with a great sense of humor, people who motivated me. And that was my thought process. I didn't really need to know what the company did, but if I was near these people, something good would happen. And so I've always said to people that the who is more important than the what, because great people do great things. So the who, prioritize the who. What matters, of course, but the who is more important than the what.
That's fantastic. So be curious, learn, raise your hand, let yourself be uncomfortable, and the who is more important than the what. If that's not some sound advice from a esteemed panel of experts, I don't know what is. Kate, Boaz, and Bobby, I want to thank you so much for the discussion and the thoughtful insights that you provided. And to all of our listeners today, I want to thank you for the privilege of your time. Bye, everyone.